There is a moment that comes to almost every woman, quietly, without warning, when she looks around at the people she has loved, the people she has given herself to, the people she has poured her nights and her strength and her prayers into, and she realizes that, in this particular hour, in this particular storm, none of them are coming. The phone stays silent, the room stays empty. The ones who promised forever are somewhere else, living their own lives, wrapped in their own comfort, and she is left standing in the middle of her own life with nothing but her breath, her heartbeat, and a whispered prayer rising toward a heaven that feels very far away. And in that moment, something happens that most people never talk about, because it is too raw, too honest, too close to the bone. In that moment, a woman discovers whether her faith was ever real, or whether it was simply borrowed comfort she leaned on when everything else was working. She discovers whether she can stand when no one is holding her up. She discovers, often for the first time in her life, who she actually is when stripped of every hand she used to hold. This is not a story about abandonment. This is not a speech about bitterness, or about counting the people who failed you, or about building a wall so high that love can never reach you again. No, this is something else entirely. This is about the sacred, terrifying, transformative power of being left with nothing but God, and discovering that nothing was actually everything. Because there is a kind of strength that cannot be taught in comfort. There is a kind of wisdom that cannot be learned while surrounded by people who catch you every time you fall. There is a kind of woman who can only be built in solitude, in silence, in the desert seasons of life where every human voice fades away and only one voice remains. And if you are in that season right now, if you are the woman reading this with tears threatening behind your eyes because every word feels like it was written for you, I need you to hear this clearly. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. Think for a moment about how you got here. It was not one dramatic betrayal, usually. It was smaller than that, and somehow heavier. It was the friend who stopped calling. It was the family member who chose comfort over confrontation and simply drifted. It was the relationship that promised safety and delivered silence instead. It was the community that clapped for you when you were useful and disappeared when you were struggling. Slowly, one relationship at a time, the room emptied out, until one day you looked up and realized you were sitting alone with your own thoughts, your own fears, and a God you were not even sure was listening. And the temptation in that moment, the very human temptation, is to believe that your aloneness is evidence of your unworthiness. That if you were better, more likable, more easy to love, someone would have stayed. That the emptiness around you is proof of some deep flaw hidden inside you. But listen closely, because this is where the truth begins to set you free. Your aloneness is not a verdict on your worth. It is not a punishment for your mistakes. It is not proof that you are unlovable or forgotten. Sometimes, the very people who leave are the ones who could never have walked with you into what you are becoming. Sometimes doors close, not because you failed, but because you were never meant to walk through them with the company you had. Sometimes God, in His mercy, clears a room so loud with other voices that you could not hear His. Sometimes the silence you fear is actually the sanctuary you needed, and you simply have not recognized it yet because silence has always felt like danger to you, when in truth, silence is where the deepest transformation quietly begins. There is an old and simple truth that gets lost in modern life, buried under the noise of constant connection and constant comparison. We are so afraid of being alone that we mistake company for meaning and noise for peace. We fill our lives with people so we never have to sit with ourselves. We surround ourselves with voices so we never have to hear our own thoughts clearly. And so when life strips those voices away, even temporarily, it feels like the floor has vanished beneath us. But what if the floor vanishing is not a fall? What if it is an invitation to finally learn how to stand on something more solid than the approval of others? What if the ground beneath your feet was never meant to be other people at all? Every woman who has ever built something lasting, every woman history remembers for her strength, her wisdom, her unshakable presence, passed through a season exactly like this. A season where the crowd disappeared. A season where the applause stopped. A season where she had to ask herself, in the quiet, terrifying dark, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when no one is clapping? Who am I when no one is holding my hand? And in answering that question honestly, painfully, patiently, she became someone the crowd could never have made her. Because crowds build comfort, but solitude builds character. Crowds build popularity, but silence builds depth. Crowds can carry you for a season, but only what you build within yourself, in the quiet, will carry you for a lifetime. I want you to understand something about the nature of growth, because it will change the way you see this entire season of your life. Nothing of true value grows quickly, and nothing of true depth grows in comfort. The tree that bends and breaks in the first strong wind is the tree with shallow roots, the tree that grew easily in soft soil with no resistance. But the tree that has weathered storm after storm, drought after drought, and still stands has roots that reach deep into places no easy season could ever have forced them to reach. Your aloneness right now, as painful as it is forcing your roots downward into places of faith and self-trust and inner strength you would never have discovered had your life stayed comfortable. Had your people stayed close, had your prayers always been answered exactly when and how you wanted them to be. This is the part that most people do not want to hear, because it requires them to stop seeing their pain as meaningless and start seeing it as material. Your pain is not wasted. It is not empty. It is not evidence that God has forgotten you. Your pain, this exact pain you are carrying right now, is the very substance from which your future strength will be built. There is no shortcut around this. There is no version of your becoming that skips the desert. Every woman who has ever emerged from her lowest season with unshakable peace, unshakable clarity, unshakable faith, walked through fire to get there, not around it, through it. And she did not walk through it because she was stronger than you. She walked through it because she had no other way to reach where she was going, and neither do you. So let us talk honestly about what it means to have no one but God, because this phrase gets used so often that we forget how radical, how terrifying, and how ultimately liberating it truly is. To have no one but God means that for a season, you cannot outsource your peace to another person. You cannot call someone to fix how you feel. You cannot borrow someone else's confidence to survive your circumstances. You are forced day after day, hour after hour, to return to the one relationship that was always meant to be your foundation and to build it brick by brick, in the dark, when no one else is watching, when there is no reward for your faithfulness except the quiet knowledge that you did not give up. And here is the secret that this season is trying to teach you. That relationship, the one between you and your Creator, was never meant to be a backup plan. It was never meant to be the thing you turn to when everything else fails. It was always meant to be the center, the root, the source from which every other relationship draws its health. But most of us, myself included, only discover this truth after everything else has been stripped away, because comfort rarely teaches us what crisis reveals in an instant. When you have people to lean on, it is easy to lean on people instead of leaning into your own spirit, your own faith, your own quiet strength. It is only when the leaning post is gone that you discover whether you can stand, and you can. I want you to hear that clearly, without hesitation, without doubt. You can stand. Not because standing will be easy, not because the ground will stop shaking beneath you, but because something inside you, something placed there before you were even born, was built to withstand seasons exactly like this one. You were not created fragile. You were created resilient, layered with a strength that only reveals itself under pressure, the way coal becomes a diamond, not in comfort but under the crushing weight of time and pressure it never asked for. You are being pressed right now, and what emerges from this pressing will not be the same woman who entered it. She will be clearer, steadier, quieter, in the best sense of the word, because she will no longer need to perform her worth for an audience that was never paying enough attention anyway. Let me speak now to the specific ache that comes with this kind of aloneness, because it is different from ordinary loneliness. It is the ache of watching others surrounded by community, while you sit in the quiet of your own home, wondering what is wrong with you that you cannot seem to keep people close. It is the ache of praying prayers that feel like they are bouncing off the ceiling, wondering if the heavens have gone silent, wondering if you are simply not being heard. It is the ache of getting up every single day and doing the work of living, the work of surviving, the work of showing up for your responsibilities, while carrying an invisible weight that no one around you seems to notice or ask about. This is real, this is hard, and I will not stand here and tell you it does not hurt, because that would insult the very real pain you are carrying. But here is what I will tell you, gently and firmly, because both are true at once. The ache is not the whole story. The ache is one chapter, not the entire book. And chapters end, seasons change. The woman sitting in silence today, feeling forgotten, feeling unseen, feeling like she is holding everything together with nothing but stubbornness and prayer, is being quietly, invisibly rebuilt from the inside out. This kind of rebuilding does not happen loudly. It does not happen with fanfare. It happens in the small moments when you choose, again and again, not to give up. It happens when you get out of bed on the mornings you would rather not. It happens when you whisper a prayer even though your faith feels thin as paper. It happens when you keep showing up for your own life, even though no one is clapping for the showing up. There is a kind of woman who only exists on the other side of this kind of season, and I want to describe her to you, because she is who you are becoming, whether you can feel it yet or not. She is calm in ways she never used to be, not because life became easier, but because she learned that she can survive hard things. She no longer panics at the possibility of being alone because she has already stood in that fire and found that she did not burn. She trusts herself in ways she never did before, because she has watched herself make decisions with no one to consult but her own conscience and her God, and she has watched those decisions turn out to be wise. She has a peace that other people notice, even if they cannot explain it, because it does not depend on her circumstances being perfect. It depends on something deeper, something rooted, something that cannot be shaken by a phone that does not ring or a room that stays empty. This woman was not born, she was forged. And the forging happened exactly in seasons like the one you are in right now. I know it does not feel like forging, it feels like abandonment. It feels like being left out in weather no one should have to endure alone. But every blacksmith will tell you the same truth. Metal is not made strong by being left untouched. It is made strong by fire and by the hammer, by heat that would destroy something weaker, by pressure that shapes it into something useful, something lasting, something that can hold an edge and carry weight it was never able to carry before. You are not being destroyed, you are being shaped, and shaping by its very nature requires heat you did not ask for and pressure you did not choose. I want to address something else, something that lives quietly underneath this entire experience, and that is the fear that if you fully accept this season, if you stop fighting it and instead surrender to it, you are somehow giving up on ever having people again, ever having community again, ever having love again. This is not true, and I want to release you from that fear right now. Accepting a season of solitude is not the same as choosing permanent isolation. Trees lose their leaves in winter, not because they are choosing to die, but because winter is preparing them for a spring that could not come any other way. You are not losing your people forever. You are shedding what needed to be shed so that what grows back is healthier, truer, and rooted in a version of you that no longer needs people the way you once did, desperately from a place of lack, but instead welcomes people the way healthy trees welcome sunlight, gratefully, but not desperately, because the tree was already alive before the sun came back. This is the deep and quiet work of this season. Learning the difference between needing people to survive and wanting people to share your life with. Needing people to survive comes from a wound, a fear that you cannot hold yourself together without external support. Wanting people to share your life with comes from wholeness, an understanding that you are already complete, already held, already safe within yourself and within your faith, and that other people are not the source of your safety, but simply companions along a road you were already capable of walking. This shift, from needing to wanting, from grasping to welcoming, is one of the most important transformations a human being can go through, and it almost never happens in comfort. It happens in exactly the kind of solitude you are living through right now. Let us also speak honestly about faith during seasons like this, because faith is not always the warm, comforting feeling that it is sometimes portrayed to be. Sometimes faith is gritty. Sometimes faith is simply refusing to curse the darkness while you wait for morning. Sometimes faith looks less like joyful certainty and more like quiet defiance, a decision made again and again, sometimes minute by minute, to keep trusting even when trusting feels foolish. Even when the evidence around you seems to suggest that trusting has gotten you nowhere. This kind of faith, the kind that survives silence, the kind that survives unanswered prayers and unmet expectations, is a different species entirely from the faith that only shows up when life is easy. It is deeper, it is harder won, and it will carry you for the rest of your life in ways that easy faith never could, because it has already been tested and found strong enough to hold weight. If you feel that your prayers have gone unanswered, I want to offer you a different way of seeing this. Not to dismiss your pain, but to widen the lens through which you are viewing it. Sometimes what looks like silence is actually a season of preparation happening in places you cannot see. A seed planted in soil does not immediately show signs of growth. For a long stretch of time, all the important work happens underground, invisible, in the dark, where no one, not even the gardener, can fully witness it. If you dug up that seed too early, out of impatience, out of fear that nothing was happening, you would destroy the very process that was quietly working. Your life right now may be exactly that kind of underground season. The stillness you are experiencing may not be absence, it may be depth. It may be roots forming that will one day hold up a life more beautiful and more stable than anything you could have built while everything around you was noisy and full. I also want to speak to the specific dignity of this kind of struggle, because there is a temptation when you are the one enduring it, to feel small, to feel like your pain does not matter because it is quiet, because it is not dramatic, because you are simply going about your days carrying an invisible weight that no one applauds you for carrying. But I want you to understand something important. The quiet endurance you are practicing right now is one of the most powerful forms of strength that exists. It is far easier to be strong when people are watching, when there is a reward, when there is recognition waiting at the end. It is a different kind of strength entirely to keep going when no one knows how hard today was, when no one will ever fully understand what it took just to get through these ordinary hours, when the only witness to your resilience is a God who sees what no human eye can see. This kind of strength does not need an audience to be real. It is not diminished by going unnoticed. In fact, it is often the most authentic strength there is, precisely because it was never performed for anyone. There will come a day, and I say this not as an empty promise but as a truth that has proven itself across generations of women who walked this same road before you, when you will look back on this season with something unexpected, gratitude. Not because the pain was pleasant, not because you would choose to relive it, but because you will recognize what it built in you. You will recognize the woman who emerged from the silence, steadier than she has ever been, less afraid of being alone, less desperate for approval, less shaken by circumstances that once would have destroyed her. You will recognize that the very thing that felt like abandonment was actually an invitation into a depth of character you could not have reached any other way. And when new people enter your life, as they will, you will bring them a version of yourself that is whole, rather than a version of yourself that is desperately searching for someone else to complete what only you and your faith were ever meant to complete. Until that day arrives, here is what I want you to hold on to, gently but firmly, like a lantern carried through a dark hallway. You are not alone simply because the room is empty. Presence is not always visible, and absence of people does not mean absence of care. Something is with you in this silence, something older and steadier than any human relationship could ever be, something that does not tire, does not abandon, does not require you to perform or earn your worth. Whatever you call that presence, however you understand it in your own heart, know that it has not left you, even in the moments it has felt most distant. Sometimes the deepest work happens exactly in the moments that feel most like abandonment, and the woman who survives those moments with her faith intact, even faith as small as a single flickering candle, becomes a woman who cannot easily be broken again. I want to speak now about what it looks like to actually move through this season, practically day by day, because inspiration without direction can feel hollow, and you deserve more than beautiful words. Moving through this season begins with small, deliberate acts of self-respect. It begins with getting up, even on the days it feels pointless, and taking care of your body, your space, your responsibilities, not because you feel motivated, but because these small acts are how you tell your own spirit that you still believe your life matters. It continues with learning to sit with your own thoughts without immediately reaching for distraction, because distraction, while comforting in the moment, keeps you from doing the deep internal work this season is asking of you. It continues with speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply loved, replacing the harsh inner voice that tells you no one wants you with a gentler voice that reminds you that being alone right now does not mean being unworthy of love, ever. It also means learning to find meaning in the mundane, in the ordinary tasks of daily life, because meaning is not something that only exists in dramatic, visible moments. It exists in the way you make your bed with intention, the way you prepare a meal for yourself as though you matter, the way you speak kindly to a stranger even when your own heart is heavy, the way you keep a promise to yourself, even when no one would know if you broke it. These small quiet choices are where character is actually built, far more than in the big dramatic moments that get remembered and told as stories later. Character is built in the unremarkable Tuesday afternoons, in the ordinary decisions no one sees, in the quiet consistency of choosing to keep showing up. It also means allowing yourself to grieve what has been lost, without rushing the process, without pretending that strength means never feeling sad. Grief and strength are not opposites. In fact, the woman who allows herself to grieve honestly, who lets herself cry when the tears come, who does not perform toughness she does not feel, is often far stronger than the woman who bottles everything and calls it resilience. Real resilience makes room for real feeling. It does not deny pain, it simply refuses to let pain have the final word. So if you need to cry today, cry. If you need to sit in the ache for a while before you can rise from it, sit in it. There is no shame in feeling the full weight of what you are carrying. The shame narrative, the idea that a strong woman does not feel pain, is a lie that has hurt far more women than it has ever helped. I also want to gently address the comparison that so easily creeps in during seasons like this. The quiet, corrosive habit of looking at other people's lives, other people's marriages, other people's friendships, other people's seemingly full and supported existences, and using them as a measuring stick for your own worth. This comparison will steal more peace from you than almost anything else if you allow it to. What you are seeing on the outside of someone else's life is rarely the full truth of what is happening inside it. Every person carries a private ache that the public eye never sees. The woman who appears surrounded by community may be desperately lonely inside that community. The woman who appears to have it all figured out may be quietly falling apart behind closed doors. Comparison lies to you by comparing your entire, complicated, behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's curated, incomplete highlight reel. Refuse this comparison. Your journey does not need to look like anyone else's to be valid, meaningful, or worthy of respect. As you move through this season, I want you to begin paying attention to the small signs of growth that are easy to miss, because they do not arrive with fireworks. Notice the day you handle a disappointment with more grace than you used to. Notice the moment you catch yourself not spiraling into panic the way you once would have. Notice the quiet strength in your own voice when you speak up for yourself, even in small ways. Notice the peace, however brief, that settles over you in moments of prayer or reflection, even when circumstances have not changed. These small signs are evidence, real and undeniable evidence, that something inside you is shifting, strengthening, becoming more solid, even while the outside world remains uncertain. Growth rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers, and you have to learn to listen for it. I also want to remind you that having no one but God does not mean God is distant, cold, or uninvolved. It means that in this particular season, the primary relationship being deepened, refined, and strengthened is the one between your spirit and your Creator. This is not a lesser relationship. It is not a consolation prize while you wait for human relationships to return. It is, in fact, the very foundation upon which every healthy human relationship you will ever have is meant to be built. A woman who knows how to be at peace with God in solitude carries a different kind of steadiness into every relationship she enters afterward. She does not need others to complete her, because she has already discovered wholeness in the quiet. She brings fullness into her relationships, instead of emptiness looking to be filled. This is one of the greatest gifts this difficult season is offering you, even though it is wrapped in a pain you did not choose and would not have chosen. There is also something important to understand about timing, because impatience can make this season feel unbearable in ways that patience never will. Growth, especially the deep, internal kind of growth you are experiencing right now, cannot be rushed without being cheapened. A flower forced open before its time is a flower damaged, not a flower blessed. The same is true of your becoming. You cannot force this season to end before its work is finished, and trying to will only exhaust you without actually moving you forward. Instead, the invitation is to cooperate with the season rather than fight against it. To ask not when will this end, but what is this trying to teach me while it lasts? This shift in question, from escape to understanding, is one of the most powerful shifts you can make, because it turns you from a passive victim of your circumstances into an active participant in your own transformation. I want to leave you with an image, one that I hope stays with you long after these words have ended. Picture a woman standing alone on a wide open field, the wind moving around her, no one beside her, no crowd cheering her on, no hand to hold. At first glance, this image looks like loneliness, like abandonment, like a woman left behind by everyone who should have stayed. But look closer. Notice how she is standing, not crumpled, not collapsed, but upright, rooted, steady despite the wind trying to move her. Notice the quiet strength in her posture, the calm in her eyes, the way she is not looking around desperately for someone to rescue her, but is instead looking forward, toward whatever is coming next, with a kind of quiet confidence that could only have been built by exactly the kind of solitude she is standing in. This is not a picture of a woman who has been abandoned. This is a picture of a woman who has been made whole. And this, in time, patiently, painfully but surely, is who you are becoming, standing in your own field, held by something greater than any human hand could ever hold you. No longer desperate for company because you have finally discovered the quiet, unshakable company of your own strength and your enduring faith. Wherever you are right now, whatever room you are sitting in, however empty it feels, however long the silence has stretched, I want you to know that you are not forgotten. You are not being punished. You are not too much, too broken, too difficult, too unworthy to be surrounded by love again. You are simply in a season, a hard, holy, transformative season, where the very thing that feels like loss is quietly becoming the foundation of a strength that will carry you for the rest of your life. Stand where you are, breathe. Keep whispering your prayers, even when they feel like they are echoing back to you unanswered. Keep showing up for your own life even when no one is watching. Keep trusting that the silence around you is not empty, but full of a presence you cannot yet see clearly but will one day recognize as having never once left your side. You have no one but God right now, and one day, when you look back on this exact moment, you will understand that no one but God was always more than enough.